In this video, I'm going to be explaining what I did to mitigate the noise that is going into my house from my workshop. If you're like me and you're working out of a garage, whether it's woodworking or just a shop in general, and you are at all concerned about the noise transmission going into your house, then this video is absolutely for you. Now, I'm going to give you a fair warning. This video is highly informative, and it's going to take you from point A to point B and let you know exactly why I chose what I did and the effects that it did have. I was extremely stressed about this topic in this shop, and I'm really glad that I decided to do what I did. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you the backstory and why this was such a huge concern for me. In my previous shop, which was a 3-car garage attached to the home, noise in the beginning was a concern for me for a multitude of reasons, whether it was for the house and my young son, or it was for the neighbors. Now, while I was concerned about it initially, it was actually a very quick transition to not be so concerned about it for a couple of reasons. In my previous shop, I only had one wall, a short wall at that, touching the home. There were no bedrooms or main living spaces on the other side of that wall, and there was no room above the garage. In regard to the neighbors, I wasn't super concerned about that either because I actually lived right next to one of the more busy roads, so the cars driving by all the time completely masked any noise that was ever coming out of my shop. So now, fast forward to this shop, totally different scenario. It was a huge concern for me because I have the wall you see behind me, which is a long wall that touches the home. I have the wall over here in the corner that actually on the back side of that is my dining room. And then directly above me is our master bedroom. So what ended up leading to the concern was once we actually got the house, I was out here doing some work in the garage, getting it prepped to accept my new tools and everything. And I was playing some music. And for some reason, I ended up going upstairs. I don't even remember what it was that made me go up there. The noise that I heard coming from the space was so loud and clear, it immediately concerned me. Now, keep in mind, during that time, my shop was completely empty, and 2 of the walls didn't even have drywall on them, right? So the noise was probably able to transmit a little bit more openly. However, that didn't change the fact that I was immediately terrified that I was never going to be able to work out here when my family was home, my children were sleeping, which that's a whole nother story because here soon that won't even be an issue. But it definitely sparked me to go down this crazy rabbit hole of a lot of research. I can honestly say that I have never in my life spent more time researching a topic other than soundproofing. When I tell you that I went down a deep, dark rabbit hole, I absolutely did. Now, my goal with all this was never to soundproof my garage, because the reality of it is, it was not going to happen unless I was willing to spend a lot of money. And I want to mention that because that's a very important factor to all of this, is if you go into something thinking that you are going to soundproof it by doing 1 or 2 small things, it's not going to happen. And the reason for that is because there's 4 really big components to soundproofing. Now, those 4 topics are decoupling, absorption, mass, and dampening. And one thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to leave some very useful articles that I read on this entire process. A lot of them came from the same website, but I'll leave a couple of different things down below if you guys want to read more about this, because I want everybody to tailor your expectations, because if you don't do all 4 of those things, you're not going to solve the problem of soundproofing, right? If you only do 1 or 2 of those things, you're going to help deaden or block that sound from transmitting into another room. And that is what I did. And I went with 2 of these, and I'm going to explain what they are. And the 2 that I went with are mass and dampening. So decoupling is basically you're separating yourself from whatever structure. Things that you can do to decouple would be building a wall in front of an existing wall, using hat channels, using resilient channels, or even going as far as building, a staggered stud wall. These are all examples of decoupling. Absorption, right? That's a material that is going to help absorb that sound. A good example of that would be the insulation that you use inside of the wall cavity. Now with mass, all we're talking about there is adding thickness to whatever it is. And an example of that would be putting 2 sheets of drywall together, therefore increasing the mass of that wall. And then finally, dampening. And an example of that would be utilizing some sort of product, for example, mass-loaded vinyl in between sheets of drywall or on the studs before putting your drywall on. You are putting something there that is going to help dampen the noise that's coming through the first layer. So my immediate reaction to all of this was, oh my gosh, I'm super worried about it. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna put spray foam in the walls and in the ceiling, and I'm gonna completely close this in and block all the noise. Well, I had some estimates done. It's very expensive, would have been a lot of work, and come to find out that that is not the solution if you're trying to soundproof something. It would be very, very good for, thermal insulation properties. My shop would stay very cool and very warm when I needed it to. However, I'm basically joining everything together. So while it might do a better job of blocking some of the noise, it would not be the most effective option. And quite frankly, there's a lot of less expensive options out there. Now, from that point, once I decided that I'm not going to do spray foam insulation, and that's honestly based off a lot of the estimates that I had on spray foam insulation, and every single one of them said, if you're trying to block noise, there are better options out there. So then I was considering blown-in cellulose and all of these other things, right? But this wall right here and this wall right here, along with my ceiling, already had drywall on it. Because it is attached to the home and it's technically an exterior space, right? The garage to the home, all of that drywall is 5/8 of an inch, which is thicker than the standard drywall that you're gonna find on the walls inside of your home. So when I started freaking out about everything and I started researching it, the very first thing that I said I was gonna do, I was telling myself, is that I'm gonna rip out all of the drywall and I'm gonna replace all of the insulation in my shop with Rockwool Safe and Sound for the interior walls and some of their other mineral wool product for the exterior walls. And then I was going to replace all of the drywall. Now, I didn't stick with that plan very long. There would have been other benefits to that, like the electrical hadn't been done yet, so ripping all of that stuff out would have made the electrical install a lot easier. So I ended up not deciding to rip everything out. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, why rip everything out when I'm just going to have to buy it again, and it's going to cost a lot of money to replace the drywall on the ceiling and the drywall on the walls when I inevitably know that I'm going to put other drywall there. The second reason is that the effectiveness of mineral wool versus fiberglass batt insulation is not significant enough to justify the cost of removing what's there and replacing it, because it would be so expensive and you're only going to get an increase in STC rating by maybe 1 or 2. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. Now, the caveat to that, if I would have walked into this room and there would have been no drywall and no insulation, I would have absolutely used mineral wool over fiberglass batt, because at that point, I wouldn't be spending a lot of money on the upgrade, if that makes sense. So instead of me ripping it all out and having that additional expense, I just decided I was not going to do that. Then I started considering other options, right? I'm going to get some drywall guys in here and I'm going to see what it would cost to do double layer 5/8 inch drywall, meaning I only have to add another single layer here, double on the other walls. Overall, it should give me, a pretty good STC rating at that point. Maybe I'll talk to them about resilient channels. I had guys come out, they gave me estimates, they were super high. And the whole reason why I had people come out and give me estimates, and I wasn't looking to do this myself, is because it was about time, right? I needed to get my tools into my shop, and the best thing for me to do would be to get that portion of it finished and painted, and that way I'm not moving tools around. I made that mistake in my previous shop. I fully understand that that may not be everybody's situation, but that is why I decided to get estimates. So after I did all the estimates, after I did all the research and everything, and I finally committed to a decision, let me tell you what I decided to choose. And that is this product right here, which is called Soundbreak XP, and it's manufactured by National Gypsum. I was lucky enough to find a retailer in the area that actually carried it and had it in stock. Now, I want to share a couple of things about this product. But first, I'll tell you what I finally decided. What I finally decided is I was going to double up the drywall. This is 5/8 inch thick. I was going to do that on all of the interior walls, giving me 2 layers of drywall. And on the exterior walls, I was going to use this product in a single layer. Now, the reason why I came up with that as my final decision, right, is one, it was less expensive than some other options. I thought I was going to do it myself and save me, a few $1,000s in the installation, which of course didn't end up happening. But more importantly, the claims and the data shows that this is 6 to 8 times more effective than a standard 5/8 inch sheet for soundproofing. The reason that is because this drywall is specifically designed to help block sound. And the way that they do that is that this is 2 layers of drywall, roughly 1/4 of an inch, maybe a little bit more, and sandwiched in between those is an absorption or a dampening material, right? Think of mass-loaded vinyl, right, in between 2 sheets of drywall, but it's not mass-loaded vinyl. I just want to make that clear. But same idea, right? It's separating the 2 pieces of drywall, putting a material in between them that helps absorb or dampen some of that vibration that's coming through. So therefore, it's more effective at blocking. So my idea behind all of this is if I have that in addition to 2 sheets of 5/8, right? But now I have 1 sheet on the outside that's better than a standard 5/8 plus the 5/8 on the inside, right? I felt like it would give me some pretty good results. Now, one thing that I do want to say about this product is 4 times as expensive as a regular sheet of 4x8 drywall. It's also incredibly heavy compared to regular drywall, which is one of the reasons why I ended up deciding to hire this out. And 2, it's not nearly as easy to work with as standard drywall. And what I mean by that is that you can't just score it and snap it. And the reason for that is because of the material that's in the middle. This needs to be cut with something else or scored very deeply on both sides to the point where you're basically cutting all the way through it, because it is not easy to work with. So I made the decision. I'm not going to replace any of the insulation anywhere. I'm not adding anything. I'm going with this drywall. But that's not where it stopped. There was another product that I used. I'm going to tell you about that now. So I used the second sheet of drywall to assist with the adding mass, right? I talked about there was 2 things that I wanted to focus on, and that was mass and dampening. To get on the dampening portion, what I used was a product called green glue. This is a noise-proofing sealant. And to give you the Cliff Notes version, you basically take 2 tubes of this. I'll have a video here showing you how it's applied, but you're just doing it in a random pattern, and then you would take this sheet and you would place it on the wall and you would attach it to the wall. Now, one thing that they do recommend is to leave a 1/4 inch gap, 1/8 to a 1/4 inch gap all the way around the exterior portions, which we did. And I'll talk about why here in just a moment. But this doesn't dry hard, but it basically gives you an extra film, an extra layer, little offset between the sheets, and acts as a way to absorb some of that vibration coming through the wall. The reason I went with this, there's a lot of mixed reviews online about green glue, right? Oh, it's total trash, whatever. I found way more positive and I found way more data that supported that it works than I did any negative. So I ended up deciding to go with this to give me that extra layer of protection. Now, I mentioned the gap around the drywall. Well, green glue also makes another product which is noise-proofing caulking. And the idea behind this is that you leave that small gap and then it gets filled with that caulking. And when the vibrations are hitting those boards and they're dissipating throughout the board, it's now got a material on the edges that is going to help absorb some of that instead of it being butted up directly to another piece, because then the vibration is just going to travel through that, so on and so forth. Again, if you want to find out more information about this, I'll leave a link to this down in the video description so you can find out exactly how it works. I mean, so far so good. I don't really know. I don't have any way of testing it other than doing a noise test, but I don't have any basis without it in 2 sheets. But again, I want to mention, to have the most effect, you want to use things together to gain the most desirable outcome. So what I mean by that is 2 sheets of standard drywall put together are going to give you some value. Maybe adding something like this, a little bit of added value. If you added something else like resilient channels, even more value. If you added staggered columns, even more value. If you built another wall, even more value, right? So using all of these things together. What I'd like to do now is show you some side-by-side comparisons of noise. And this is not a scientific way of doing this. I'm basically going to show you some decibel readings from 2 certain locations in my house. The first being inside that door, which is our kitchen. The second being on the inside of my far wall, which the dining room is right on the other side of that. Those are the 2 closest areas to the shop. Now, these first readings that I'm going to show you, unfortunately, this is the only readings I was able to get prior to actually getting everything installed. And that was from when they were installing the polyurea coating on my floor. They had a generator running, and I basically just took some, open door. This is how loud this generator is going inside. And I moved from the kitchen into the kitchen and took a reading. And then I went into the dining room and took a reading. Keep in mind, these were readings before any of the additional drywall and before any of the additional tools were in my shop. Now, the next readings that I'm going to do is I don't have that same generator, obviously, but I do want to run my dust collector, and I'm going to go in each one of those locations, and I will show you on the left the volume with nothing running at all. And on the right-hand side, you'll be seeing with the dust collector running the difference between the two. Now, the first one that you're seeing is me in my kitchen. Left side is with just standard everyday noise in the house. And on the right side, that is with the dust collector running, standing in the kitchen. The next one you're looking at is with me in the dining room, which is immediately on the other side of the shop. One on the left is just standard regular noise in the house. And the one on the right is with the dust collector running. So these tests obviously don't definitively prove anything, because my original sample sound that I used is different from the dust collector. So what I will tell you is that in terms of cutting down the noise emitted from the shop, whether it's using tools, talking, music, whatever it is significantly different. And it did do a good job of helping block the noise from coming in the home, to the point where if I'm actually in my living room, I wouldn't hear the dust collector at all. A couple other things that I wanted to mention, and that has to do with some other things that I've either done to help with noise or that I plan to do. And the first one is this wall that you see behind me. I actually have a YouTube video showing exactly how I did this and why I did this, but the Cliff Notes version is I built that for not only more wall space, but also constructed it in a way and used a product inside being rock wool, safe and sound, and using MDF on the front to help add mass, add absorption, and help block some of the noise from going out the two-car garage door, which sound travels out that door very easily when there was nothing on it. And yes, I've had it pointed out to me from posting it on Instagram or on YouTube. They're like, well, you still have another door. The sound's going to go out that. Yes, it is, but it's also not going out of this door. So it's lowering the amount of noise that comes out of the shop. I mean, why would I wall in the other door? Then I don't have a way to get in and out of my garage. Another thing that I will be doing is adding some acoustical panels to the ceiling and potentially some other areas. I will be clear that that has nothing to do with soundproofing. It will just make the sound better, and it will also help dissipate some of that airborne noise, which in the end could have a positive effect on the sound going into the home. But again, acoustical panels are not there for soundproofing. Now, I've spun you back around because I wanted to show you the biggest culprit of sound going into my home at this point, and that is through that door. And there's a reason why that is the biggest culprit. It's because of that cat door that was installed by the previous owners. Right now, sound can just go directly through there, and in the kitchen is where the noise from the shop is the loudest. Now, the solution to this, one, because I don't need that cat door, is I'm going to replace that door with a solid core, fire-rated garage entry door. What that's going to allow is more sound blocking from coming into the kitchen. Replacing this door because of that will have a significant impact on the amount of noise that goes in there. The reason why I haven't done it yet is because, to be honest with you, I'm pretty happy with the noise that's coming out of the shop at this point. So now the part that everybody's probably been waiting for, and just happy that I'm done blabbing about all of that other fantastic data that hopefully will help you, and that is how much this whole thing cost me. So I want to start off by saying the estimates that I got to do some of the original things we had talked about was anywhere between $5,000 and $8,000. That did not include the soundproofing drywall, and it also did not include green glue. I would have had to purchase the green glue and provide it for the contractor doing the work. So the first thing that I will talk about in cost was how much I spent on the green glue and the acoustical caulking. Both from the same company, and that cost me around $600. Again, I did slightly misestimate how much I needed. I do have some extra. They also didn't use exactly how much they were supposed to, so I probably could have got away with a little bit less, but $600. Now for the drywall. If I remember correctly, I ended up buying 26 sheets for my specific project. 23 of those were the SoundBreak XP drywall. The other 3 were just standard 5/8 inch drywall because it was for that one section that I just needed to finish. The total cost for the drywall was $1,600. So now between the drywall and between the green glue and other various materials, we're right around $2,200. Now, if I would have done this on my own, that would have been the end of my expenses. However, again, I mentioned earlier in the video that it came down to time. I needed somebody to get it done. I had one of the original contractors come back and hang the drywall and finish the drywall so it was paint ready, and additionally fix the ceiling drywall that was done very poorly when the house was built. And that ended up costing me $3,200. So all in all, I spent right around $5,400 on that entire process. But I wanted to give you an idea of, I paid contractors to do one part of it. I paid for the materials for the other part of it. Either way, you could probably save a little bit money doing one or the other. I could have saved a substantial amount of money without paying the contractors. But at the end of the day, I needed it done. It got done. And the results have been fantastic. One other thing that I wanted to mention is I did spend about $250 on materials for doing the wall that I did in front of my garage door. And again, you can watch that video. I'll leave a link down in the video description. Now, to close this video out, I want to address kind of the biggest reason for me deciding to go the route that I did. And that was the way that I did it will allow me the opportunity to improve it in areas other than the shop. I needed the shop to be done. I needed to install lights. I needed to paint. I needed to get my tools in here. And I didn't want to worry about moving anything. In the event that I want to further improve the sound, I can make modifications on the inside of my home and don't have to worry about moving anything on the inside of my shop. An example of that would be the dining room. If I wanted to add a second sheet of drywall, add some green glue, repaint that wall, I now have even more blockage of that sound coming from in here. The other big culprit is upstairs. If it ever becomes a problem, which I doubt it will because I'm not out here woodworking at night when my wife is trying to sleep upstairs, but there are things that I can do like add in blown cellulose insulation in the ceiling, as well as we plan on replacing the flooring upstairs, the carpet. When we would do that, I would just get a thick sound absorption underpad for the carpet because they actually make that stuff for that reason. So there are other things that I can do to further expand on the sound going into the house. But again, it's really performing well. I'm very happy with it, and I don't see myself needing to do anything extra. Well, I know that was really long. I know it was a lot of talking. I know it was a lot of information. I really wanted to do this video, and I really wanted to share as much information as possible because I overly stressed about this and I spent hours trying to research the best course of action. Hopefully you now have a little bit more information and maybe just some data that you can take into your current shop, a shop that you're building, and hopefully it will help you make a good decision. As always, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, get out in the shop, try something new, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.